Hello and good morning. Welcome back to Client Stories with Laura while Amy is away. Can't wait for Amy to get back, by the way, because this is stressful. Okay, so I want to talk to you about a client that I just solved yesterday while it's still fresh in my mind. Let me see if I can articulate it. A couple of points that I want to make with this case is mom ended up being an NPE, so her dad wasn't her dad. And we have a half-brother match that isn't a half-brother. Let's dig into it. All right, so client is a middle-aged male who came to us saying, I'm an adoptee. I want to find my mom and dad. I have no information. I have no idea what age they were at the time of the adoption, no idea where they came from, anything. And until I had children of my own, I never saw another face that looked like mine. Okay, welcome to DNAngels. Meet Laura. Laura's going to take care of you. All right, so I broke the DNA down into the typical 4 networks. 2 networks matched on one side of the family, and the other 2 did not match, okay? So I'm going to focus on the 2 that do first before I figure out this, okay? So I got that down, narrowed it down to a set of grandparents, and they had multiple kids, many boys, many girls, could have been any of them, right? So when a situation is like that, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and I don't have any idea what age mom or dad was. I have to figure out the other side. So many times in adoptions, you have to solve both sides before you figure out who mom or dad is. With the exception of, this is a man, you can use his X DNA to figure out what network his mom is from, because a man only inherits their X from their mother's side. However, 23andMe has shut down their chromosome browser, and we were waiting for uploads to GEDmatch and FTDNA, so I did not have access to to a chromosome browser to look at his X match. And frankly, I solve cases a little bit faster than it takes for an upload to come back. But anyway, I digress. So let's go over to these 2 networks that do not match. And here's a point that I want to make. I know that this parent is going to be illegitimate or from an affair, an outside child. Mom and dad were married, but baby doesn't come from that daddy, right? And we have a half-brother match over here. But he just has a name and no tree. Typical, right? It's never going to be easy. His name is not necessarily common, but it's not really unique. So I'm not able to trace him down that way, you know. So what I do, and this is another point that I need to make, when you are an outside child and you have 2 networks and you know that you've got a set of great-grandparents here and a set of great-grandparents here for these 2 networks, you must look at their daughters, okay? This is why. I am a woman who had a baby as the product of an affair. I raised the child. The father does not raise that child. The man that I had that affair with, probably I didn't even tell him the baby was his. I told my husband the baby was his. I'm raising the child and giving my child my husband's name, okay? So let's say we've got the Johnson family here and we've got the Trout family here. I'm going to look at all of the females born to the great-grandparents under the Johnson family and all of the females born to the great-grandparents under the Trout family. One of those females is my grandmother. How am I going to narrow this down? I got lucky. There was a half-brother match. That isn't a half-brother. I looked at all of the obituaries for the females only under those great-grandparents, and I happened to see that last name. It's not a common but not unique last name. And I said, that must be my grandma. Because she married... I'm sorry. Yeah, that's my grandma. Because her child has... Her daughter has married this guy, right? Trying to follow myself here when I'm trying to explain. I read the obituaries of all of the females under the great-grandparents. That was going so good until that dog started barking. I'm going to have to muzzle her while I do recordings because that is irritating to me when I'm right in the middle of the train of thought. Anyway, all right, so I have the great-grandparents. I start reading the obituary for all the females, okay? One of the females had a daughter that married into that family name for the supposed half-brother. I said, oh, I must have found my mom, right? I've got to grandma. Her daughter must be my mom, not a dad, but my mom. So I'm like, okay. So I lay the tree out. I put in that grandmother as my grandmother and her children, right? And the woman that married the man with the last name has many sisters and brothers, but she also has a twin. What do you do when you got a twin? You don't know if they're fraternal or maternal, or fraternal or identical. This is what I had to do in order to solve the case, okay? So I had to add all of the children to each of the twins, okay? They're both girls, by the way. And I had to look at the birthdays for each of the children for each of the twins. Well, the half-brother match ended up being born the exact same year as my client, red flag, and just a few months later. Another red flag. That can't happen. I did give a gentle possibility that my client was also a twin and placed for adoption, and he just had the wrong birthday. But listen, we don't feed into conspiracy theories here. We let the science tell us the truth. Anyway, I knew that was going to be a first cousin and not a half brother, but I also knew that they were identical twins, because when you're identical twins, you will have a carbon copy of the DNA, and that your offspring will appear as half siblings to each other. So, half brother is really first cousin, his mom is auntie, and the twin is mom. Mom was deceased. However, I want to give you a good update, because my client is a rip the band-aid off, get her done kind of guy, and he reached out to his half siblings on mom's side last night, and all he ever wanted to know is, why was I placed for adoption? You know, he didn't understand why he was placed for adoption. And to tell the truth, he was the second baby born. So there was an older girl, him, along came brother, and then a baby girl. But he was the second born, and he was placed for adoption. He had no idea why. So listen, I don't know why, but when he did reach out to the family, they told him that mom had been looking for him. She wanted to reunite with him all her life, and that they were keeping their eye out for him too. They just didn't know how to go about finding him. And I agree, you cannot find a sibling that's placed for adoption. There is no paper trail in adoption, typically. And so they were not going to be able to identify him. And they didn't know to take a simple DNA test, which their cousin did, but their cousin wasn't looking for anybody. And when my client had reached out to the cousin, he's like, nobody in my family placed a baby for adoption. We must not be, family. Oh, you're family, darling. You're big time family. I don't understand that concept. Do you? Have you ever reached out to someone that's a DNA match to you, and they said, oh, well, I don't know those names, we must not be family? I've seen that many times this week, several times, people responding with, oh, you're not my cousin, I don't know that family name. Yeah, actually, your dad ain't your dad, you really are my cousin.